Pilots had a name for it. They called it the Kai Tak Heart Attack. And once you understand what they were asked to do there, the nickname makes complete sense. For over 7 decades, Hong Kong's Kai Tak Airport forced pilots to execute a maneuver found nowhere else on Earth, a 47-degree manual turn at less than 600 feet, threading between skyscrapers at nearly 200 miles per hour, all to touch down on the busiest single runway in the world. It ranked as the 6th most dangerous airport ever built. And yet, 29.5 million passengers a year trusted their lives to it. This is the full story of Kai Tak, how it was born from a failed real estate scheme, expanded by prisoners of war under Japanese occupation, grew into the pulsing gateway to one of Asia's great cities, and finally fell silent on a summer night in 1998, when a man named Richard Siegel stood in the control tower and said 5 words: "Goodbye, Kai Tak, and thank you." The name itself has nothing to do with aviation. It comes from 2 businessmen, Sir Ho Kai and Mr. Ao Tak, who formed the Kai Tak Investment Company in 1912. Their plan was straightforward: reclaim land from Kowloon Bay and build a residential housing development. The company failed. Ho Kai died in 1914, Ao Tak in 1920, and neither man ever saw an airplane land on the patch of earth that bore their names. But the reclaimed land they left behind, flat, empty, sitting right on the waterfront, turned out to be the perfect place to put an airstrip. On Lunar New Year's Day, 1925, the first recorded flight lifted off from Kai Tak. At that point, it was nothing more than a grass strip, used by the Royal Air Force and members of the Hong Kong Aviation Club, a hobbyist's field, barely an airport at all. But over the next decade, things started to change. A concrete slipway for seaplanes went up in 1928. The first aerodrome superintendent was appointed in 1930. By 1935, Kai Tak had its first control tower and hangar, and on March 24, 1936, the first commercial passenger flight arrived, an Imperial Airways plane called the Dorado, flying in from Penang. That moment transformed Kai Tak from a military curiosity into a functioning commercial airport. The first tarmac runway, running east to west, was completed in 1939, stretching 457 meters, about a quarter mile. And then the war came. Hong Kong fell to Japan on December 12, 1941, and what followed at Kai Tak is one of its darkest chapters. On September 15, 1942, the Japanese military launched a massive expansion of the airport, and they used Allied prisoners of war to build it. The operation started with 800 prisoners of war as laborers. By October, that number had swelled to 4,000. These men built 2 concrete runways, Runway 1331 and Runway 725. Before the Japanese occupation, Kai Tak had no concrete or paved runways at all. Everything the airport would eventually become was constructed on the back of forced labor. And here's a detail that captures both the brutality and the strangeness of that period. To source construction materials, the Japanese partially demolished Sung Wong Toi, a 45-meter-tall stone monument commemorating the last emperor of the Song dynasty. They also tore down the historic wall of the Kowloon walled city. But before touching Sung Wong Toi, the Japanese military, aware of the cultural weight of what they were doing, had the area exorcised. 50 monks, dressed in white, held a 3-day vigil to send away the ghosts of the hill. Only then did the demolition begin. After the war ended, Kai Tak stepped into its modern era. Cathay Pacific was founded in 1946 by an American named Roy Farrell and an Australian named Sidney DeCanso. A master plan for the airport's expansion was approved in 1954. Runway 13 stretched further with each passing decade. When it first opened in 1958, it ran 8,297 feet. By the time the airport closed 40 years later, it had grown to 11,120 feet. A new terminal building was completed in 1962, the Hong Kong Air Cargo Terminal opened in 1976, and in 1974, the airport installed the piece of technology that would define its legend, the Instrument Guidance System, or IGS. That's where the approach comes in. Because the approach to Kai Tak wasn't just difficult, it was, by any reasonable standard, extraordinary. Aircraft would begin their descent southwest of the airport, flying westbound at a minimum altitude of 6,500 feet above Cheung Chau Island. From there, they'd intercept the IGS, a radio guidance system deliberately offset 47 degrees from the runway centerline. That offset wasn't a design flaw. The system couldn't point straight at the runway because mountains were in the way, so instead it guided aircraft toward a hillside. That hillside was Checkerboard Hill, a 98-meter rocky slope on the Kowloon Peninsula, painted with a massive orange and white checkerboard pattern. That checkerboard was the pilot's visual target. They flew toward it, descended toward it, and then at about 660 feet above the ground, they began the turn. A 47-degree right turn, manually flown at nearly 200 miles per hour, just 2 nautical miles from the runway threshold. They entered the turn at 660 feet and exited it at 140 feet. 140 feet, roughly the height of a 14-story building. The aviation community called it the Hong Kong Turn, or the Checkerboard Turn. Passengers called it terrifying. Russell Davey, a former Cathay Pacific general manager of operations and pilot instructor, described it this way. It was the only major airport in the world that required a 45-degree turn below 500 feet to line up with the runway, literally flying between the high-rise buildings, passing close to the famous orange and white Checkerboard Hill as you made that final turn toward the runway. He wasn't exaggerating about the buildings. Kai Tak sat in one of the most densely populated urban areas on the planet, and the approach path took aircraft directly over Kowloon City. The gap between descending planes and rooftops below was sometimes just 100 to 200 meters. Passengers sitting near the wings could look down and see television screens flickering inside apartments, could make out the color of laundry hanging on rooftop clotheslines. A local joke held that if someone raised a clothes pole on their rooftop at exactly the right moment, they could almost touch the belly of a passing jet. Captain Dave Newbury, a Cathay Pacific pilot who flew into Kai Tak for 4 years before its closure, later reflected on what made the airport special. Kai Tak was one of the last major airports in the world where you really had to rely on basic flying skills, stick and rudder, and we were all a bit sad when it closed. Airlines didn't let just anyone attempt this approach. Pilots needed special certification and dedicated simulator training that replicated the checkerboard turn, crosswind corrections, and go-around procedures, all designed to build muscle memory for an environment with almost no margin for error. And because of its proximity to residential homes, the airport enforced a strict curfew. No operations between 11:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. Every landing and takeoff had to happen within that window. Despite all of it, the mountains, the buildings, the 47-degree turn at 140 feet, runway 1331 became the busiest single runway in the world, 36 landings and takeoffs per hour, a new aircraft touching down or lifting off every 100 seconds, on a runway that demanded some of the most challenging manual flying in commercial aviation. The accidents, when they happened, were remarkably few given the difficulty. On August 24, 1965, a United States Marine Corps KC-130F Hercules lost control due to engine failure shortly after takeoff, killing 59 of the 71 people on board. On June 30, 1967, Thai Airways Flight 601 crashed into terrain on approach, killing 24 of 80 passengers. Later that same year, on November 5th, Cathay Pacific Flight 33 failed during takeoff and overshot the runway, leaving 1 person dead and 40 injured. Then came 2 incidents that cemented Kai Tak's reputation in the modern era. On August 31, 1988, CAAC Flight 301 struck the approach lights in poor weather, killing 14 people. And on November 4, 1993, China Airlines Flight 605, a brand new Boeing 747-400, attempted to land during a typhoon, overshot the runway, and slid into Victoria Harbour. Miraculously, no one died, though 23 people were injured. The image of that 747 sitting nose down in the water at the end of the runway became one of the most iconic photographs in aviation history. But here's what's remarkable. For an airport handling nearly 30 million passengers a year with that approach profile, the safety record was, statistically, extraordinary. The special training worked. The certification requirements worked. The sheer skill of the pilots who flew in and out of Kai Tak, day after day, year after year, it all worked. By the mid-1990s, though, it was clear Kai Tak couldn't go on. The airport had been designed to handle 24 million passengers annually, but by 1996, it was processing 29.5 million international passengers and 1.56 million tons of cargo, making it the world's third busiest airport for international passengers and the single busiest on Earth for international cargo. The infrastructure was straining. The city had grown around it. The safety margins, however well managed, were inherently thin. The decision was made to build a new airport at Checkerboard on a largely artificial island off Lantau. The price tag came to approximately 20 billion US dollars, 157 billion Hong Kong dollars, and it remains one of the most expensive infrastructure projects ever undertaken. The end came on the night of July 5, 1998. The last scheduled arrival touched down at 11:38 p.m., Dragonair Flight KA-841 from Chongqing. At midnight, Cathay Pacific Flight CX-251 lifted off for London Heathrow, the last scheduled commercial departure, and then at 1:05 a.m. on July 6, Captain Kim Sharman, 51 years old and making his own final flight before retirement, piloted Cathay Pacific Ferry Flight CX-3340, an Airbus A340-300, from Kai Tak to the new airport. It was the last aircraft to ever depart from runway 1331. In the control tower, Richard Siegel, Hong Kong's Director of Civil Aviation, spoke quietly into the silence. "Goodbye, Kai Tak, and thank you." He dimmed the runway lights briefly, then switched them off for the final time. Anson Chan, Hong Kong's Chief Secretary, was there for the ceremony, along with dozens of aviation officials, airline executives, and airport staff who had spent their careers in this improbable place. Many of them were in tears. What happened to Kai Tak after the lights went out is its own fascinating story. The site is being transformed through one of the largest urban renewal projects in Hong Kong's history. The Kai Tak development covers over 320 hectares, and when complete, approximately 86,000 people will live where jumbo jets once roared overhead. 30,000 housing units are being built, along with 270 acres of open space. At the very tip of the old runway, the spot where China Airlines Flight 605 slid into the harbor, the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal opened in 2013. The Kai Tak Sports Park followed, opening on March 1st, 2025 at a cost of 30 billion Hong Kong dollars. Its centerpiece is a 50,000-seat stadium with a retractable roof, alongside a 10,000-seat arena and a 5,000-seat public sports ground. The first major musical event held there was Coldplay's Music of the Spheres World Tour, 4 shows in April 2025 that drew a combined 183,980 attendees. Nearly 184,000 people gathering where aircraft once landed every 100 seconds. In September 2025, the Hong Kong government approved plans for an elevated smart transit system stretching 3.5 kilometers, linking the MTR Kai Tak station to the cruise terminal, with stops at the sports park and the residential zones. Contract award is targeted for 2026, with operations beginning by 2031. And Checkerboard Hill? After the airport closed, the famous orange and white pattern faded and disappeared under trees. It wasn't restored, partly because it might confuse pilots landing at the new airport across the harbor. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, between 2020 and 2021, restoration work was quietly carried out on both the west and south faces of the hill. The checkerboard is visible again. The memory of Kai Tak lives on in other ways too. Flight simulation programs, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Infinite Flight, have deliberately recreated the Runway 13 approach so that virtual pilots can experience the checkerboard turn for themselves. Thousands of real cockpit videos from the final years of Kai Tak continue to circulate online, watched by millions who want to see what it looked like to thread a 747 between apartment buildings at 140 feet. In March 2025, to mark the airport's 100th anniversary, Cathay Pacific flew a special commemorative flight, CX-8100, an Airbus A350-1000, over Victoria Harbour. 100 years after that first flight on Lunar New Year's Day, 1925. Kai Tak was born from a failed land deal, built by prisoners of war, and pushed to its absolute limits by the explosive growth of one of the world's great cities. For 73 years, it asked more of its pilots than any other major airport on the planet, and they delivered 36 times an hour, day after day, in typhoons and crosswinds and fog, turning toward a painted hillside and trusting their hands on the controls. There will never be another airport like it. And somewhere on that hillside in Kowloon, faded but restored, the checkerboard is still there, a monument to an era when flying into Hong Kong meant something no amount of technology could replicate. It meant you had to be good.